Here we go. So welcome to our launch party for the Fridays for Future zine titled Thunder Making Noise in the Age of Climate Denial. For those that don't know, a zine is like a booklet or mini magazine, and the one that we made is about climate art by local youth in Thunder Bay. So before we start, we are going to talk a bit about Fridays for Future Thunder Bay and who we are. We've been a group since March of 2019, pretty much. The first strike was held over the March break outside of City Council, but this was not with the current section of the group. Now we're not too sure who organized that particular strike, but that was the very first one that we had in Thunder Bay. Then we had our second strike organized by some students at Lakehead University in September of 2019 for the Global Strike Day, the first Global Strike Day on September 20th, I believe it was. And this was mainly driven by Kelsey Agnew, Kelsey Sanders, and Courtney Strutt. I'm sure there were some other people that were very integral to it, but this is the part of it that we know. From there, a few of us youth took over after talking to Kelsey and Courtney and hosted our own strike with their help and guidance on November 27th, I believe it was, or 29th of 2019. And that was the last strike that we were able to have in person. But it was a really important one for us because it was during the time where everyone was trying to get climate emergencies declared in their region. So we used that strike as a way to get signatures, letters, postcards, all the support that we can to the Thunder Bay City Council. And they declared the climate emergency on January 13th of 2020. This wouldn't have been possible without the Earth Care Advisory Committee either, who spearheaded that declaration, which is huge, and we are always so grateful for that. But a bit more on the climate emergency declaration. It basically symbolizes the City Council's commitment to work towards environmental stewardship and considering the environment in everything that we do, and also for recognizing that the climate is an emergency and that we do need to take action on it. Yeah, and then Ivy, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, so sort of how we started the zine. It was our first substantial project after the pandemic. We just sort of started picking up virtual meetings again, and we had the idea in August to put together this little magazine showcasing local youth art, really that expressed anything to do with the issue of climate change. And a bit of a fun fact, we almost named it Dab for the Trees. We ended up using the more professional title, but you will notice that in the zine there is a piece of graphic art that has that title still, so you can go look for that in it. And our goal was to originally have the project finished in September 2020, which got delayed a little bit. We have pretty intense school schedules, and there's the whole stress of COVID, and just the process of collecting all the entries took a bit longer than we expected, but we ended up with a really beautiful collection of visual pieces and written pieces, photography, art, everything like that. And now we're going to have a couple of those creatives do some readings and speak about their pieces a little bit.
Yeah, so I will attempt to share my screen and we can look at the pieces. There we go. Can you all see that? Awesome. So the first one that we are going to look at is actually mine. It's titled The Turnaround Tide, and I'll start by reading it and then talk a bit about it. The boom of thunder woke the youth, but you could not hear a thing. We scream and shout and shake the ground, but you will not hear a thing. The strike of lightning powered the youth, but you did not see its flash. My people unwoven, our land still stolen, but blinded you continue to thrash. The flood of water moved the youth, but you did not feel the wave. We march in lines and hold our signs, but you claim that we just misbehave. Your lack of action screams in our heads, weighing us down as if it were lead. If you care for us so, why let the storm rage? It's all on us. All on us. So the idea behind this was that I wanted to have something that was similar to the title of the zine. I thought that by using thunder, it's very much about Thunder Bay, and a huge part of this project was that it's the local youth perspective. So I wanted to tie that into the scene. And I also wanted the first line to have more action. So starting with the sound of the boom, I thought was a good way to do that. This actually wasn't the initial format I had. So in this one, we can kind of see how each line starts with an action word that relates to weather or storms. It was initially just supposed to be that first line, and then each stanza following was elaboration on that, but through a different sense. But this format kind of got difficult to do once I got to smell and taste. So I decided to stray away from it and instead put different words that related to like thunder and rain. So that change, I was happier with how it flowed because of that, but it did change some things in a way that I liked a little less, but overall I think it made the poem better, and it was more, the like motifs were more consistent, which I appreciated. Or was happy with. The you in this poem is not meant to be like everyone that isn't the youth. It's meant to be the people in power that are taking action. A lot of the time in the climate movement, we see adults talk about how much they care about the youth and how amazing they think we are, and talking about how the youth are the future, but yet they ignore the things that we say, or they'll just treat like, oh yay, the youth are being leaders, but not take us seriously, or will kind of look down on us because we're younger. And a lot of the times governments or organizations will act like they are doing a lot for the climate when really not enough is being done. So I wanted to really bring that into the poem and talk about how it's not necessarily people living their everyday lives that are the problem. It's the systems that we have that are working against the government, not the government, that are working against the environment, and that are continuing to harm and are ignoring the different voices on this topic. And then the one line that I was really happy to get in there was, my people unwoven, our land still stolen, because a huge part of the environmental movement for me is reconciliation, as all of you would know because I talk about it all the time. But just that connection to the land being so integral to Indigenous creed and Indigenous identity and culture. And I think it's true for every person, regardless of their culture. There's a connection to the land that we all feel in different ways. But for me, as an Indigenous person, that's part of the path to reconciliation. And there are some great resources about it that are actually referenced in the scene. There's a toolkit called Violence on the Land, Violence on Our Bodies that talks about that connection a lot as well. But we need to protect the environment if we're going to move forward with that. And then next, I think we have Walker.
Yeah, I'm Walker. This piece I did, it's a digital illustration that I did. I was actually just watching David Attenborough's autobiographical story on Netflix, and it was really inspiring for me because it resonated very much with how I believe the path to the healing of the earth is going to be accomplished. And I did this piece to show what it was, what beauty is to many people is not healthy, if that makes sense. Because many people consider the places that we have destroyed very beautiful in their own right, and I can understand that, but there is a primal beauty that comes with being untouched and unaffected by people that really needs to be recognized and kept and not taken over, because the importance of those places is not only for like the health of everyone, but also just for the integrity and beauty of the earth in general. And yeah, that's all I have for that piece. I also did a essay, or I don't know if the word essay is correct, but I did a speech, I guess you could say, on bringing back the wild places. And here it is, I'll read it. We believe that if we stop the destruction that we are inflicting on the earth, we will save her life. This cannot be the solution, for surely there is no saving the earth. She is too far gone to save. She is dying and is crying out for help. And we must help her. We must begin an era of healing and restoration. This is the only road to peace and a healthy relationship with Mother Earth and all of her creatures. If the best we can do is prevent further damage, we are doomed to failure, for we are too late. Enough damage has already been wrought upon the earth. A crucial step we must eventually take to the healing of the earth is bringing back the wild places, the places untouched by man. We must begin a process of dismantling the places of concrete and metal no longer serving purpose. We must put away the elements that prevent growth and let them be reclaimed by nature to eventually become wild places themselves. We must not try to control the growth of these places by planting trees in straight lines or flower gardens. We must let this land grow, we must instead caretake this land and this place of beauty and keep it healthy while it grows at its own natural pace. And for me, I think a lot of climate people who think they're acting on climate change and are like, yeah, I support climate change, they're really on your side, but they're not by your side, if that makes sense. And if we keep, like I said in this, if we keep just moving forward and trying to stem the flow of like constant pressure and movement into the environment, we're like really far gone at this point anyway. Like even just parks in cities are nice, but they're not gonna help the animals live, right? Like the only way we can truly bring back nature in a meaningful way in our lives and in our community is if we bring back the wild places, like I said in this. And that's really all I have to say.
Guess I should unmute myself. The next one that we have is by Rory Smith, who unfortunately is not able to be here today because she has work, but this is it, and I'll be reading her notes on it just so that we can talk about what went into the piece, because it's a really well-considered piece about the environment. So it's titled "The Fate of the Earth is in Your Hands." And reads, "Take care of the trees, they will take care of you." When she was making this piece, she really wanted to make sure that she did more than paint a message about being eco-friendly. She made sure that she did not contribute any waste for this project. She used all recycled materials. The board she painted on is from an old Bristol board project. The paint has all been reused. The paintbrushes are all secondhand. The paper is recycled, and the pencils she used were made from recycled newspaper. One of the biggest problems we are faced in climate change is the loss of trees and killing the environment from industrial processes. When you look up a picture of the Earth on Google, you'll get a bright green and blue globe, when in reality, it's not bright green. To fully visualize the damage we have done, she made the land out of newspaper, representing all the trees we have cut down. She took all the newspaper articles about the environment and trees specifically. Some of the words she wanted to stick out were "tree cutting, make a difference," and "the clock is ticking." She feels that these words force people to think about how climate action is necessary right now. Next, the hands holding the earth represent everyone around the world. If everyone works together by creating green initiatives, we can bring back a healthier environment. Or we can continue like this and it will get worse. Either way, it's up to us to make a change. The quote, "Take care of the trees, they will take care of you," represents the relationship between people and the environment. Taking care of the earth will benefit us with healthy water and food. In return, the environment and plants will grow healthier. It is necessary for our health and the health of future generations that we take a stand for the environment. Her goal with this piece was to show how much the relationship between us and the environment matters. She really enjoyed making this piece as she hasn't been able to paint much with all the schoolwork. She's glad she took the time to work on this painting and focus on the issue. And she's also doing some pretty amazing things outside of art and the scene that are contributing to the climate movement. So we're really happy that we were able to showcase this one. And next up we have Lexi.
Yeah, so as it says at the top of this photo, I took it in Sichuan, China when I was on a trip there, and at the time took it kind of mindlessly. It was a day where I was volunteering at a panda conservatory kind of way out in the middle of nowhere, and I kind of like cleaned cages all day, and then at the end I got to walk around, and this was in the nursery, they called it. So that panda is like 8 months old or something like that, I believe, which it looks bigger in the photo, but they were all just hanging out and sitting in trees like this one, as you can see. And I think upon reflection, symbolizes a lot of things at this specific nursery and conservatory area. They rehabilitated pandas and then let the baby pandas get to about, I can't remember, 2 years old or something like that, and slowly reintroduced them into their natural habitat, into this conserved area where there was no construction or anything like that allowed. So speaks to not only the resilience of nature and animals, but when we work, I think, humans to do something and protect and conserve certain things, it truly is successful when we prioritize that. And also upon reflection, I think this trip was very transformative for me because I always knew what climate change was, obviously, but it was never something that the urgency resonated with me, I guess, because I didn't see the effects firsthand. And then one day I was on a hike in that area, and the air pollution that day was really brutal. And the scenery was beautiful nonetheless, but the group of people I was with, we were all kind of coughing right up to the top. And that was kind of the first time I guess realized the effects of pollution and saw it firsthand, which was upsetting, but sparked an interest and got me to further educate myself on the topic. And now is something I'm very passionate about, obviously. And that's all I have to say on that. Ivy?
Yeah, so I'll wait for the sign to scroll down. So I will be reading my piece titled Forest Soul. A little girl stands under the pines, her pines, shading her forever in this spot here. Which rock would she rather bring home? Which path would she rather take to the creek? Cool water, a vein through this child. Muddy boots and muddy hands. She is the land. She is the pines. This is how a heart is formed, with the strength of the deep and soft pines, with the fluidity of the cool and winding creek, with the open, drifting sky. So I wrote this piece a lot to do with my early childhood. Specifically, my family used to have this old camp in northern Idaho when we used to live in the States, and it just had these beautiful, big ponderosa pines, and there was this little muddy back road with a small little creek that us kids would just go play in all day, and we just would be in nature all day. And so this poem is sort of about my experience and my connection with that place in particular, and how it really had a part in raising me in my early childhood, and sort of brought forth a lot of respect and admiration of nature in my life. And I think everyone has their own motivations for being involved in climate activism. I know a lot of people are kind of deterred by the whole like tree hugger bit, for lack of a better word. But this poem is just speaking about my personal motivations, which have a lot to do with my connection with nature. And like Keira was talking about in the beginning, how it's sort of a really special relationship with everyone in a different way. And especially in like right now, I think it's a very lonely time during the pandemic, that it's a good opportunity to sort of look into those relationships and explore those connections that maybe you haven't really thought about very much before. So I think Lexi's gonna do a little bit of a conclusion.
Yeah, so just chatting it a bit about why it's important to take action. So hopefully at this point, you have read the Zine and felt the emotion in some of the pieces and feel optimistic and sad and now want to take action, which how to go about doing this we talk about at the end of the Zine. So take a look at that. But unfortunately, climate change is an issue where we have a time constraint and we have to adapt to the effects of it, but preferably mitigate before they happen. And if we don't take action present and right now, that the effects will be irreversible and we won't be able to do anything, which is extremely sad. But the fact that there's a bit of urgency hopefully motivates people to do something, and it's getting more and more urgent every day, obviously. And as Keira mentioned, also understanding that seeking environmental justice and working towards these issues and solving them, all of them are inextricably linked, and continuing to set goals and fighting climate change will be a step towards Indigenous reconciliation and other social justice issues, which is also hopefully something that motivates people to take action in their own lives. So I think also faced with the pandemic, we've seen just how powerful humanity and society can be when faced with an issue that's very pressing for the safety of communities, and how vulnerable populations can be affected by these things, which is very similar to climate change when we're faced with an issue where people can come together at the same time and hopefully get things done when we're set with the task of doing so. So again, these vulnerable communities aren't as affected by the results of so. But would anyone else like to add anything based on that?
I just wanted to say that it's a lot of people who are climate activists end up disagreeing and arguing with other climate activists because their ways of doing it and going about it are very different. And I think it's very important that we all kind of band together in this very crucial time right now and take this thing seriously together, as opposed to nitpicking the ways of doing these things. Like if someone does something and you're like, that's not how I would have done it, but they're still contributing to climate change, like acknowledge that and help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? Well, thank you. Oh, Keira, go ahead.
No, just continuing to make sure that the emphasis is like, yes, change as much as you can within your own life, but really ask your politicians, ask your local councils, ask organizations to be making these changes, because ultimately they do have a lot of power when it comes to the environmental movement. And if we support that change and if we ask for that change, we'll hopefully see it more and more. And yes, educate yourself on different perspectives within the topic. There's a lot of intersectionality here, and it's good to be aware of everything.
Absolutely, yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you all for coming to the launch party. Thank you for watching the launch party. Follow our Instagram. There's stuff coming up for Earth Day, virtual challenges and such. Share the Zine and dab for the trees.